Hello brothers, welcome back to the Tensei Slime light novel summary series on AniMonolith. Continuing right where we left off, inside Kondou's chamber, Agera steps up to challenge him with Carrera's approval. But Kondou? He doesn't even acknowledge Agera. His eyes are locked only on Carrera, clearly recognizing her as the true threat. Carrera tries to reassure him. Relax, I'm just here to watch. But Kondou is no fool. Carrera then clarifies. To demons, a 2-on-1 fight isn't considered cowardly. Still, as a special exception, she'll play fair this time and let Agera have his duel. Kondou wastes no words. He draws his gun and fires. A loud shot rings out and Agera collapses, clutching his chest and coughing up blood. Carrera dashes in instantly to block Kondou's follow-up strike aimed at Agera's head. Kondou had anticipated her interference, but what surprised him was her speed, fast enough to meet his blade head-on. In truth, Kondou had never accepted Agera's challenge in the first place. Agera's injury was the result of his own naivety, and Kondou's slash wasn't meant to finish him off. It was bait to drag Carrera into the fight. The clash leaves Carrera's golden sword cracked. Just a few more exchanges and it would shatter. Sensing this, she signals Agera. Despite taking an eraser bullet, which temporarily drained his energy, he begins to recover. Both he and Carrera now realize Kondou still hasn't gone all out. In the next instant, Agera transforms into a blade. Carrera grips him firmly as her mana surges into the weapon, restoring what he lost. The sword glows brilliantly, overflowing with power. Kondou sneers at the sight, disgusted by someone wielding their comrade as a tool. Worse still, he believes Agera committed the unforgivable sin of impersonating the founder of the art hazy style. The tension boils over and Kondou unleashes his killing intent, clashing violently with Carrera. But within half an hour, Carrera finds herself on one knee, overwhelmed by the sheer gap in their strength. Kondou is a monster beyond imagination, another terrifying foe like Zejun or Velgrind. And yet, instead of despair, Carrera grins. The stronger the opponent, the more her blood burns with excitement. Against impossible odds, she steadies her stance, ready to throw herself back into the fray. On the other side, Kondou wasn't faring much better. From the very start, he had gone all out, even activating his ultimate skill, Conviction. King Sandalphon. Yet despite everything, he still couldn't bring down Carrera. The clash only grew fiercer. Carrera pressed forward with relentless sword strikes, trying to limit Kondou's movement. But each time, he parried with ease and retaliated with gunfire. Conviction King granted Kondou 4 types of special bullets. Dispel, which nullified magic effects. Remove, which pierced barriers. Necrosis, which disrupted mana circuits. And Eraser, which drained energy by seeing through the enemy's core. And then there was Judgment, the strongest round, which combined all 4 effects. By calmly observing the flow of battle, Kondou would choose the perfect bullet to exploit his opponent's weaknesses. Paired with his masterful swordsmanship and unshakable discipline, this was what made Tatsuya Kondou, the strongest of the Imperial Guardians. The contrast between them was striking. Kondou fought with icy reason, while Carrera fought with raw emotion. And yet, that very difference made them recognize one another even more. "How did you know I was going to use magic then?" Carrera asked with a smirk. "Simple. If I were you, that's what I would have done," Kondou replied flatly. Hearing that, Carrera's grin widened. It had been a long time since she'd found someone worthy of her full strength. Winning or losing no longer mattered. What thrilled her was the fight itself. "You're amazing, Kondou, truly the best opponent I've ever had," she declared. Kondou answered not with words but with his blade. His strikes were sharp, precise, and relentless. Relying on her instincts and Agera's techniques, Carrera managed to evade. Then she spotted it, a subtle habit. Just before pulling the trigger, Kondou's fingertip always twitched slightly. It was a flaw invisible to most, but enough for Carrera. She timed her swing perfectly. Kondou barely managed to block with his pistol, but Carrera forced it from his hand. The weapon clattered to the ground, and Carrera surged forward, convinced of her victory. But her instinct screamed danger. She pulled back just in time. A flash of steel cut the air, and in the next moment, her left arm was severed. Carrera froze in shock and fury. Kondou now stood ready with both hands on his blade. His stance transformed into something far more refined. From the beginning, he had never relied on the gun. It had all been bait to lure Carrera in. To be tricked by something so small enraged her beyond reason. "Calm down, Carrera-sama," Agera's voice echoed through their telepathic link. He reminded her that Kondou hadn't underestimated her at all. He had gone all out from the very start because he saw her as a genuine threat. Slowly, Carrera's fury cooled, and she admitted the truth. To prove it, she struck her own face, regaining her composure. At last, she accepted Kondou as an equal. Kondou too acknowledged her, donning his mythical great armor, fashioned after the ceremonial uniform of the old Imperial Navy. Though outwardly simple, its aura was overwhelming. Facing him, Carrera unleashed her power and proudly declared her name. "I am Menace Lord Carrera, loyal servant of Demon Lord Rimuru-sama, one of the 12 Chaos Guardian Lords. Upon my pride, I will kill you," Kondou responded in kind. "I am Tatsuya Kondou, former lieutenant of the Imperial Navy, commander of the Imperial Guardians. I accept your challenge." The two warriors locked eyes. The air grew heavy as their powers clashed. Carrera calmly picked up her severed arm and reattached it as if nothing had happened. Kondou, meanwhile, simply watched without pressing the attack. He had already played all his cards. There were no alternative options left, and he couldn't afford to take reckless risks. Still, in his full power state, he was confident that he could defeat any opponent, so there was no need to rush. With his unique skill decipherer, Kondou could perfectly read Carrera's movements and even track the flow of magicules within her body. Combined with his ultimate skill conviction, King Sandalphon, this ability was enhanced far beyond the level of a normal unique skill. Carrera, for her part, exerted complete control over her vast reserves of magicules, restoring her wounds so seamlessly it seemed as if the battle had never taken place. What made things even worse for Kondou was that Agera's power was completely synchronized with Carrera, further amplifying her might. The two clashed again. Carrera unleashed a devastating magic attack while Kondou aimed his sword at her head. His blade now carried the same 4 effects as his bullets, meaning a direct hit would cause serious problems for her. And yet, Carrera was exhilarated, thrilled to face such a worthy opponent. In terms of pure combat skill, Kondou had the edge, his willpower further strengthening his ultimate skill. Carrera only managed to keep up thanks to her massive reserves of magicules and Agera's support. Then came a turning point. A slash imbued with the effect of necrosis grazed Carrera's abdomen, disrupting her mana flow and freezing her circuits. The synchronization with Agera wavered, revealing a harsh truth. Even with Agera, Carrera still lacked the strength to defeat Kondou. The wound refused to heal, forcing her to clutch her stomach to stem the leakage of magicules. She couldn't believe it. How could a mere human, even one who had awakened as a saint, push her this far? The reality was cruel. Kondou had clawed his way to power through relentless training and discipline, while Carrera had simply lived her eternal life indulging in its pleasures. Her pride as a primordial demon screamed against the thought of defeat, especially since failing here would mean betraying Lord Rimuru's command. For the first time in her life, Carrera felt fear. She forced her body to regenerate and prayed desperately for victory. Never before had she yearned for strength as she did now, and in that moment, something responded. A voice whispered within her, and the raging force buried deep in her soul finally took shape. Carrera embraced it, gave it form, and bestowed upon it a name. To fulfill Rimuru's command and shatter all obstacles, she awakened a new power, the ultimate skill, Annihilation King Abaddon. A skill worthy of her title as Menace Lord, the power of absolute destruction itself. With this awakening, Carrera was reborn. The battle with Kondou had reached its decisive stage. On the other side, Kondou had already realized the shift in his opponent and bitterly regretted not finishing her off earlier. He had done everything in his power, cutting down her barriers, disrupting her magic circuits, striking her again and again. Kondou thought he had struck Carrera with a fatal blow on numerous occasions. And yet, no matter how many times Carrera fell, she kept getting back up. And now, at the very end, he had given her the opportunity to awaken her ultimate skill. Victory slipped from his grasp in that instant. Carrera gathered a massive amount of energy in her hands, invoking her supreme spell, Abyss Annihilation. Its destructive power far surpassed even gravity collapse. If left unchecked, it could erase not just the battlefield, but the entire planet itself. Even Kondou faltered, recognizing the danger. This wasn't just an attack. Carrera intended to follow it with a finishing strike. If he allowed it to land, he would never be able to respond in time. The only path left was to wager everything on stopping her head-on. With that resolve, Kondou drew upon a sword technique he had once learned from Hakuryu, fusing it with the energy of his Judgment Bullet, his most powerful attack, one normally usable only once per day. He had already expended it against Veldora, but now he forced himself beyond his limits. In a single decisive moment, he charged, slicing straight through Carrera's cataclysmic magic. Pain tore across his entire body as destruction gnawed at him, yet he pressed forward, blade aimed for Carrera's head. But Carrera wasn't standing still. Swiftly, she invoked Agera's sword technique, Oboro, 100 blossoms in full bloom, unleashing a storm of dazzling strikes. In an instant, Kondou's blade shattered and Carrera's counter cut deep into his shoulder. That was the final blow. His body had already been pushed far past its limits, and now, with this strike, he collapsed to the ground. As darkness closed in, memories surged back. Kondou recalled his failures, unable to defend his homeland, unable to uphold his promises to Emperor Rudra. It was Rudra who had once stopped him from ending his own life, who had treated him as a friend, who had entrusted him with an impossible request. If I ever lose myself, kill me. Kondou had accepted, albeit reluctantly, knowing better than anyone that Rudra was nearing his limits. Yet he had failed that duty as well, failing to see Rudra's slow corruption, failing to act when Dhamrata moved against him, failing to stop the tragedy that unfolded. In the end, Kondou realized he had been manipulated all along by Justice King Michael, a pawn led astray. Broken, tormented by regret, Kondou looked up at Carrera, the enemy who had defeated him. And with the last of his strength, he entrusted her with his final wish. Take my gun, and use it to kill Rudra. He was going to entrust his role to Carrera, his enemy. Carrera picked up the Nambu pistol that was lying on the ground. It's broken. So it is, Kondou thought, as his consciousness faded. He had been a little naive to think that maybe the demon would listen to his wish. Demons were not that kind. Reality was cruel, and Kondou understood that very well. Even though he had become a saint, a spiritual life form, Kondou was still a human being. If his soul was destroyed, it was impossible to be revived. Carrera's blow had dealt a fatal blow to Kondou. After, he began to let go of his consciousness, but wait, don't die yet. I can kill the Emperor if you want, or whatever. You're so slow. What's the reward? It's common knowledge that if you want to work with a demon, you need a contract. Carrera was originally a demon that could never be negotiated with. And yet somehow, she felt as if she could listen to Kondou's request. However, she was not willing to work for free. Kondou couldn't help but smile at Carrera's flustered expression. He was getting more and more amused. The demon who had been his enemy. Her embarrassed and flustered appearance soothed him. The price Kondou had to pay was clear. Everything he had, his soul, his power, his very existence. I have heard your wish. In the name of Carrera, the Menace Lord, we have a deal. Your wish shall be granted. Kondou smiled as he heard those words solemnly proclaimed. He was reaching for his shattered pistol. Kondou poured all that remained of himself into it. The weapon gleamed with golden light, reforged into mythical class, and within it his soul passed into Carrera's keeping. When it was done, Carrera let out a sigh. Though she had honored his request, she couldn't hide her disappointment. Carrera thought it was lonely. That's no fun. It's been a long time since I've had such a resolute opponent. She muttered this to herself. At that moment, a voice declared the successful fusion of the Ultimate Skills Annihilation King, Abaddon, and Conviction King Sandalphon. Carrera looked down at the pistol in her hand, now glowing with a dazzling golden light. It seemed to whisper that she was no longer alone, promising to guide her and help her wield its power more skillfully. What had once been Kondou's strength had now taken form as a weapon, his legacy, and with it Carrera had gained a new partner. Beside her, Agera returned to his original form. Though his body was bruised and battered, he smiled proudly at his master's victory. For him, simply surviving and standing by Carrera's side was enough to honor his promise. With renewed resolve, the two of them stepped forward together, ready to face whatever awaited them. And that wraps up the events for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again in the next episode on AniMonolith.